Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a new review for you from a brand that we've seen kind of popping up all over the place, and I think for good reason. This is the Swiss Watch Company, or SWC. They were basically, they're a micro brand. Of course, they're Swiss made, and they're really focusing on that Swiss made, affordable, kind of high spec timepiece. And when I say high spec, I mean pretty high spec. I mean the spec list is definitely pretty loaded for these particular units. A little bit about their brand history. The founder actually started out about 17 years old working QA for the Swatch Group, and he pretty much worked his way up from there, and now, as an enthusiast, he started the Swiss Watch Company. So of course, you can tell these types of watches are dive watches. A little bit about those. Some key common characteristics and design language when you're looking for a dive watch. Of course, you're going to want something that's water resistant, normally through some type of screw down crown. You're going to want something that's tough, legible, with a dive time bezel. And then if it's on bracelet, it's always nice to have a diver's extension available as well. So this particular model is the SWC Diver, and really it's their kind of take on trying to offer the most fully loaded Swiss-made diver under $500. That's right, guys. This actually clocks in under 500 bucks, right at $450. So you compare this. So this isn't just Swiss powered. It doesn't just have a Swiss movement. This is a Swiss-made timepiece, and it's as far as the validity of Swiss made and how Swiss made is Swiss made. That's definitely a conversation for another video, but in this case, it does meet those Swiss made standards, which means essentially 60% of the value of the watch was produced in Switzerland. And of course, it has a Swiss movement, and the final assembly was done in Switzerland. So by those standards, it gets to bear the Swiss made emblem. So it does. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get these in hand for a closer look. Okay, so as you can see, we have a blue mount model here on the right, and we have the black dial over on the left. Some key features you're going to notice is this does have a very matte finish, and then of course everything is fully brushed with some nice polished highlights here and there. So really nice from that aspect, and it definitely borrows from other designs without really being too homage-y, if you will, in its execution, and especially in its scale. It's really something that's a little bit different than what's out there. And I think if you're somebody that's just looking for a solid timepiece, rugged tool watch, and the Swiss made monikers means a lot to you, I would definitely give these guys a look, especially as for something outside of the Swatch Group. When you get some comparables going, I think this is actually, these are pretty fully loaded. There's a lot of Swiss watch groups, essentially, because they're not independent brands. They have to actually tier their watches, so they have to design a watch to fit within a particular range. So although they might want to add sapphire or ceramic or something like that, or 300 meters water resistance, they have to have it tiered because they all compete and they're all under the same umbrella, right? It's kind of like they'll put out the Cayman, Porsche will make it, and they won't have it be as good as a Carrera. Just because that's the way they have it lined up. So what ends up happening is it really means that like Mito, Tissot, Hamilton, Certina, those divers, they'll purposely not make them to the same spec as something from Longines. And from Longines, they won't make it to where it's going to be compatible in spec to something from Omega, right? And then it goes all the way up. So it's one of those things. And of course, some Omega divers, they're not going to try to make them have more of a value proposition than some other, ranges that are in the Swatch Group, like, let's say Blancpain. So that's just something to think about. But without going too far off course, let's just go ahead and take a look at the features on here pretty quickly, and quickly go over the dims again. So dimensionally, you're going to have a 44 millimeter width here with a 13.2 millimeter thickness and a 50 millimeter lug to lug. It's going to be stainless steel, of course, brushed and with some nice polished highlights there. You can see those very sharp chamfers, and then also some kind of soft highlights here along the 3-link bracelet. As far as the crystals go, these are sapphire. It's only a single dome, so when you do have it at a very harsh angle, you'll see that there is going to be some distortion there. So not super clear, but you know, if you're looking at it straight on, it's never going to be an issue. Even at a decent angle like this, it's really not going to affect visibility and legibility. It's just when you get to the really kind of harsher angles is when you're going to notice that it's not going to be the full double dome. And then it does have a nice shape to it, though, as far as the way that the crystal is domed there, along with the slope of the bezel here. So this is a 120 click unidirectional rotating bezel with ceramic insert. Very smooth action. You can see I can easily turn it even with these gloves on. Okay, and as you can see, it doesn't quite, at least on this one, it looks like the blue one is actually lines up perfectly. This one is maybe it's just the angle that I'm looking at from the camera, but to me it looks like it might be just a hair shy short on that there, but the blue one looks like it's right on the money. So also I've noticed from handling these two, there's going to be a slight difference in the action as well. So like this one is a lot notchier and clickier. It feels just tighter in general. Of course, these are, you know, press loaners, so they have done the rounds a bit, so I wouldn't be too alarmed by that. But just, you know, just to be completely transparent there, like that one locks right in perfectly. Feels a lot tighter from that aspect as well. Now, the nice thing also is that with this AR coating, it actually has 5 times. That's going to be a bit of a theme that you're going to see on these watches, is they're really going to be overdone and in a good way. So it's just kind of that overbuilt nature of a dive watch. So the anti-reflective coatings here, 5 times. For the lume on here, 20 layers of Swiss Superluminova, so that's why you can really see that color pop there. And when we get to the low light transition and lume shots, you guys are really going to enjoy that, because these things really glow. Now, as far as the bezel itself, it has these really nice scallops, very reminiscent of the Seamaster Professional. And then when it comes to the crown, nicely signed, as you can see, lines up really nice, because you'll notice that on the actual symbol there, the lower half has the longer legs, and it does line up here with the lower half having the longer legs. So that actually lines up just perfectly, which I can definitely appreciate, and something that isn't a deal breaker when it doesn't line up, but it's definitely a nice show of effort when it does line up, because that's not something that often just happens by accident. Now, the movement inside is a Sellita SW200-1, because it does have a date there, and although you cannot see the movement through here, it does have a quite nice pressed, you know, stamped case back there, which really has some great texturing to it. So really quite impressive. And then of course the blue model is just the same. There's really no difference from that aspect. It's really the only differences are going to be the colors on these inserts and dials. Everything else is pretty much identical. Now, as far as the dials themselves are, of course, matte with some texturing there. You can see a little square in the center. You know, definitely a little odd that it doesn't carry out behind these indices and whatnot, but you know, not a deal breaker. It's definitely something that does add quite a bit of originality to these pieces. So can't really get mad at that when there are so many divers out there that are just, you know, Rolex sub homages. So it's nice to see people kind of mixing things up. And of course, this is just the first iteration. I'm sure they'll do future refinements, and you'll see this kind of transform over time, like you've seen with other Swiss made divers, or really just any diver that ends up standing the test of time, and actually gets future iterations and different updates. And I don't see why these wouldn't, because they definitely offer quite a bit of bang per buck. Now, of course, everything is matte, as you can see, but you actually do get a nice high polish on the actual hour markers there, and these minute markers, which I think is really, really nice. And then you also get, of course, the concentric circles, basically the sections off there, which catch the light really nicely and really give it just a different look. And as opposed to kind of your basic matte finish or high gloss finish, this really gives you just a touch of extra detail. It almost looks like a kind of an engraved stainless steel insert with a different hue to it. And then, of course, because of that, you know, you actually do get something that's going to really perfectly match with the dials, which I can definitely appreciate from that aspect. So really great looking from there. Again, 20 layers of super luminova, so these things are super thickly applied, if you guys can get an idea of that from looking here at this angle. And then these are water resistant to 300 meters, which is great, or 1,000 feet. The lug width is 22 millimeters with a down to a 20 millimeter taper here. So you'll see that they do taper down a bit as you get further down the bracelet. It actually does have an integrated clasp, which I thought was an interesting way to put it. Most people would see this kind of as a deployant clasp, but it really isn't. It is exactly that. It's an integrated clasp. So basically the scissor here is integrated underneath the links, so you're gonna actually have you know, links that are gonna lead up here versus, you know, having a solid locking clasp or something like that with like a typical clamshell kind of deal. So I thought that was a very interesting take, and it actually ends up being quite comfortable, and of course looks really nice from a desk diving perspective. So really can't fault them too much on that. And then, of course, since they include half links, it does help, although there are no micro adjusts because it's not a traditional clasp archetype. Now, with that all said here, guys, these look great, but you know what? Let's see what they look like on the wrist. Okay, as you can see on my 7¼ inch wrist, these 44 millimeter watches actually were really nice. I was really surprised that they actually are 44 millimeters wide, because the way that they wrap around the wrist really nicely makes me feel like they really wear a lot closer to a 42. Even up close, you know, with the distortion you're going to kind of get from the camera lens, it doesn't really look too oversized, and it especially doesn't look oversized when you actually get the whole arm in there. Now to go on for the black model here, really nice. And you can see there's a bit of a difference in the kind of lume tone and coloring. While in daylight, I do kind of prefer the more pure look here on the indices and whatnot for the black model. But I think definitely the color of the blue is something special and really catches the eye. And the matte, you know, and mixed with polished accents looks really, really great. But as you can see, works really nice, wraps around the wrist, feels nice. This clasp here is actually quite comfortable. It has a nice curve, as you can see, where it sets there. It just wraps. It doesn't stick out or anything, cause any types of issues there. So really nice. Wears super comfortable, and you guys are in a treat, having a treat here because I'm left-handed. So all my videos always show the video, you know, show the watch on the right wrist here. Since I'm reviewing two of them, you do get to see what it looks like on the left wrist. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get these ready for some lume shots. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights. So as you can see, these glow really great. You have the green tone, very classic, and then also the cool blue glowing very brightly. One of the things I like to do in these lume shots is actually integrate a low light transition, because you'll of course not always spend all of your time in direct sunlight like my hot studio lights do a great job of kind of recreating. So what I do is I'll bring in a little off-camera lighting here and kind of wave it through and simulate a bit of some low light transition. So when you're going in and out of the building, in and out of a vehicle, whatnot, you're gonna see kind of how the colors, especially when it comes to anything you're gonna see on YouTube, how they're really represented. Of course, everything looks a lot brighter under direct lighting there, but once you see this kind of off lighting, it gives you kind of an idea of really the darker, deeper tones, and it also gives you a chance to really examine the brushing and the uniformity on it, and then of course how highly polished the polished points are when you're looking at the bracelet and case finishing. So as you can see there, it's definitely a very clean, clear look. These, you know, the level on this, I wouldn't call it anything like near luxury or anything like that, but definitely up to par when you compare it to some of the mainstream Swiss contemporaries, especially. Of course, you're going to get some stuff out of Asia that is going to be also quite similar, but I think this definitely is right up there with something mainstream, and I think these would be obviously a lot more expensive if they were priced out by a mainstream brand. So as far as on the wrist, you know, they do wear larger, but really not chunky or oversized feeling. It really does wear more like a 42. As far as model variants go, you're going to have the black, of course, the blue. There's also a really nice kind of olive green option, and then there's black with an orange chapter ring, and then you're going to get the white dial with the black bezel insert option. So there's going to be a nice amount of diversity there. If you do like this look, you can get a nice little mixture as far as the colorways go. Now, comparable models, I mean, this really does, as I kind of mentioned before, it just really they compare well to entry-level and kind of mid-tier Swiss-made options. To me, this watch it basically is almost a Tag Heuer, just without the Tag Heuer branding. And to a lot of people, Tag Heuer's branding isn't the greatest branding that's out there. You know, it's their you know, it's kind of a love-hate thing, especially within the watch community. So let's say something like that, if a Tag is right up your alley, but maybe you're not a Tag fan, or maybe you just can't afford one, something like this can give you a very, very similar wearing experience, apart from, of course, a bit of the notoriety when it comes to the badge there. The bottom line, you know, this thing is a real spec beast. The SWC Diver has a lot to offer. I mean, as you guys can see, when it comes to materials, and then as well as the depth rating, Swiss movement, Swiss made, you're going to get a lot of bang per your buck. So if you can really enjoy this aesthetic and appreciate the details, this could definitely be a fun watch for you, and it could easily be something that can be worn every day. It's a tough piece. It's not really meant, I mean, for me anyway, this isn't really meant to be a desk diver. This is meant to be a rugged sports watch that you can take anywhere and do anything with. I mean, you can put this you know, on a couple different types of NATOs or different types of straps, and this is perfect to take on a hike with you. It's also perfect to of course jump in the water, but it's just, you know, these are tough pieces with the matte finishing, the brushed cases. It really just shows that they're really going for quite a tool-like aesthetic, and I think they really pull it off. And I almost want to compare that to some of the more, you know, the micro brands that have really made a living off of this aesthetic. You know, brands like Armida or Helson, where everything is matte, everything glows like crazy. But of course, you know, those are Asian-made timepieces and whatnot, and normally powered by Miyota movements. Here you're going to get a Swiss movement, and it's also Swiss-made. So if that, you know, rings any bells for you, or, you know, blows any whistles, and it's something that you can be excited about, and maybe you felt like was missing from those types of really kind of core tool diver brands, I think these could be worth a look as well. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do hit like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.